Now, this week, UK inflation hit 9.1%, a fresh 40-year high as food and fuel costs kept rising. All of us are feeling these price pressures, not least pensioners. Many elderly people have indeed had to tighten their belts after the triple lock, which ensures annual pension rises are kept in line with inflation, average wages or 2.5%, whichever is higher, was temporarily suspended. But this week, Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced the triple lock will be restored next year, which could see the basic state pension rising by inflation a bumper 10%. Well, here to talk about this is Christopher Brooks. He's head of policy at the charity Age Concern. And Vicky Price is still with us, chief economic advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Chris, what do you think of this restoration of the triple lock? I guess the champagne corks were popping.
Well, I can assure you we don't drink much champagne at Age UK. But yeah, it's very welcome for the Chancellor to announce that he's committed to restoring the triple lock. It makes an absolutely huge difference to a lot of pensioners. The majority of pensioners in the country rely on the state pension for most of their income. So it's really welcome for a lot of people who have been really struggling. And obviously, as we've heard, it only went up by 3.1% this year. So it was well below the current inflation figures, which left a lot of people with a huge gap and a really significant shortfall to make up in their budgeting. So to restore the triple lock, I think, is very much needed and is indeed very welcome. And we hope the government does stick to this.
Chris, what would you say to the argument that, yes, of course, there is pensioner poverty in the UK and many pensioners, as you've said, rely heavily on that basic state pension. But quite a lot of pensioners, there's no easy way to say this, will use the basic state pension to buy, more wine for their cellars or maybe a few repairs on their holiday home. I guess what I'm saying is that this is a universal benefit, of course. It's across all pensioners, a sacred principle of our welfare state. But given that times are tough and cash is strapped, wouldn't it be better to target specific policies, specific benefits on pensioners that need it most, rather than an across-the-board rise when so many other parts of society, not least young families with kids, there's a lot of suffering there too?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of suffering from all walks of life. And it's not Age UK's role to advocate for other groups, so we're just here to represent the interests of older people. But the universal benefits are really important. It's really the only way you can make sure that you reach everybody. So there are obviously means-tested benefits that pensioners can claim, mainly pension credit, which is very valuable to a lot of people and passports people through to other benefits as well. But a lot of people don't claim it. About a third of eligible pensioners fail to claim pension credit, which is a real shame. And I would encourage any of your viewers who even have a vague sniff that they might be eligible for pension credit to make a claim, because you never know, it could be really helpful. But pension credit, because it's unclaimed by so many people, there are a lot of pensioners, often people on the very lowest incomes, who rely or completely reliant on the state pension itself. And so increasing it is absolutely imperative. It's the only way you can really be sure that you're reaching the very hardest to reach. And I think if you try to means test it further, it would really backfire. And yes, OK, there are some wealthy pensioners. That's fair enough. It's a well-known fact. But most people really aren't wealthy. They live sort of on the breadline or even below the breadline. About 1 in 6 pensioners still live in poverty. Many of those don't claim pension credit. So it is really important to maintain this balance between universal benefits as well as the means-tested benefits that people can claim on top and can help people build up a better standard of living.
Vicky, it's an age-old debate, isn't it? Universal benefits as opposed to targeted benefits, which, as Chris Brooks of Age UK rightly says, sometimes the most vulnerable, they don't claim their targeted benefits. They just suffer in silence. They're hard to reach, particularly if they're living alone. If you were still running the government's economic service, what would you say to ministers about this restoration of the triple lock, which will see people with basic state pensions, some of them wealthy, getting a 10% increase in the basic state pension?
Well, I would say that what we don't want to see is a reversal of the trend that we had seen some time for some time before the COVID crisis hit, which was at least pensioners were improving their standard of living. We used to have quite a lot of pensioners who are very poor, just as has been expressed. What we don't want is that to be reversed now, because we stick to not really compensating people for the cost of living crisis.
1 in 6 is bad pensioners in poverty. It was worse, wasn't it? Before, I mean, 10 years ago, it was more like 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 even.
Absolutely, and I think it was under Gordon Brown and perhaps towards the end of the Tony Blair regime, if you like, where there was a big effort made to reverse that trend, which was actually making loads more pensioners fall into the poverty trap, if you like. So that would be pretty bad if that was going to be the case. The thing to remember, of course, is that quite a lot of pensioners get pensions from occupational pension schemes as well.
Firm-based pensions.
Yes. So the state pension, on average, I think it's probably something like less than 50% of what they all get. But even if you add it all together, certainly some figures I looked at was just before COVID. That's why I mentioned that, because things have changed quite significantly. We had these ups and downs since. The average income, if you like, of a pensioner was something like £15,000. And we do know that on £15,000, there isn't a huge amount that you can do in terms of, you mentioned buying extra wine and so on. You can just about survive with, the occasional possible holiday, perhaps, you're going to take. But it certainly doesn't make you rich by any means. So increasing that amount for pensioners isn't going to make any huge difference for them. And it certainly isn't going to be inflationary. That's the other thing that we have been worrying about. And that's just not, I don't think, going to be the case now. And I come from a country, which is Greece, which during the Euro crisis saw this real reduction in pensions. And the hardship that caused in real terms was huge. And actually, it led to even greater hardship across the economy as a result of that. And that was a real problem. So I'm in favour of what's going on.
Chris Brooks of Age UK, it wasn't a given that the government was going to restore the triple lock, was it? I mean, you will talk to many people in government in Whitehall. It's your job. Age UK is a very well-connected charity. Oh, I'm afraid we've lost Chris Brooks of Age UK. That's hopefully we can get him back in a moment. Vicky, what I was going to say to Chris, maybe you can pick up with me, is that it wasn't a given. Oh, Chris is now back. Chris, it's not a given that this triple lock was going to be restored. I'd certainly talked to ministers and officials who were intimating it may not be, particularly because the government's keen to appeal to younger workers, and there's a sense of kind of, intergenerational strife going on. Oh, the pensioners, the baby boomers, they've got all the houses. Young people can't get on the housing ladder. We can't even afford to have kids. You had a great life. We're much poorer. There is an element of that in our politics at the moment, isn't there?
I mean, that's always around. I'm not sure it's something that really cuts through with the public, though. I think the polling of the public shows that most people are really supportive of older people and making sure that older people who are living on very low incomes have got sufficient means. I think restoring the triple lock, though, is a big step in the right direction. It wasn't a given. Only the earnings link is enshrined in the law. The rest of it is a political commitment. But obviously, with prices rising so much, and given that the earnings link was suspended temporarily last year, it would have been very, very harsh to then turn around and say to pensioners, actually, all the gains that you've made, all the reduction in poverty that you mentioned earlier that's happened over the last 15, 20 years, all of that is going to be taken away with a couple of years' worth of high inflation. It would be very, very difficult to say that to people, I think. So I think it's a very welcome step. And I think there are lots of things that the government can look at doing for other age groups. I think what's really important is that this isn't viewed as something that needs to be achieved by levelling down pensioners. It really should be a lot of focus as well on helping people raise their incomes, levelling up people under state pension age.
Chris Brooks, you are Head of Policy at Age UK. Thanks a lot for joining us here on GB News to discuss that restoration for pensioners from next year of the pensions triple lock.